Today is day 53 of me reading through the Bible in 1 year. Before we get started, I do want to say a quick prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for another day. Thank you for giving us the gift of Sabbath. It's something that you carved out for us from the beginning of time, that we would have to not only rest, but also to spend more time, intentional time with you, Lord. I ask that as I read these words, that you let them penetrate my heart and my mind, that you soften my heart to anything that you would like for me to understand through your word. And I ask that you do the same for anybody who is interacting with these videos. In your name I pray, amen. Alright, so today is February 22nd. We're going to start in Leviticus 13. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "If anyone has swelling or a rash or discolored skin that might develop into a serious skin disease, that person must be brought to the priest or one of his sons. The priest will examine the affected area of the skin. If the hair in the affected area has turned white and the problem appears to be more than skin deep, it's a serious skin disease, and the priest who examines it must pronounce that person ceremonially unclean. But if the affected area of the skin is only white and it does not appear to be more than skin deep, and the hair on the spot has not turned white, the priest will quarantine that person for 7 days, and on the 7th day the priest will make another examination. If he finds the affected area has not changed and the problem has not spread on the skin, the priest will quarantine the person for 7 more days. On the 7th day, the priest will make another examination. If he finds the affected area has faded and has not spread, the priest will pronounce that person ceremonially clean. It was only a rash. The person's clothing must be washed, but the person will be ceremonially clean. If the rash continues to spread after the person has been examined by the priest and has been pronounced clean, the infected person must return to be examined again. If the priest finds that the rash has spread, he must pronounce that person ceremonially unclean, for it is indeed a skin disease. Anyone who develops a serious skin disease must go before the priest for an examination. If the priest finds a white swelling on the skin and some hair in the spot has turned white, then there is an open sore, in the affected area. It is a chronic skin disease. The priest must pronounce that person ceremonially unclean. In such cases, the person need not to be quarantined, for it is obvious that the skin is defiled by the disease." Excuse me. Anyone who develops a serious skin disease must go to the priest for an examination. If the priest finds a white swelling on the skin, and some hair in the spot has turned white, and there is an open sore in the affected area, it is a chronic skin disease, and the priest must pronounce that person ceremonially unclean. In such cases, the person need not to be quarantined, for it is an obvious skin defilement by the disease. Now suppose the disease has spread all over the person's skin, covering the body from head to foot. When the priest examines the affected person, and he finds that the disease covers the entire body, he will pronounce that person ceremonially unclean. Anyone who develops a serious skin disease must go to the priest for an examination. If the priest finds a white swelling on the skin, some hair on the spot has turned white, and there is an open sore in the affected area, this is a chronic skin disease, and the priest must pronounce that person ceremonially unclean. In such cases, the person need not be quarantined, for it is obvious that the skin is defiled by the disease. Now suppose the disease has spread all over the person's skin, covering the body from head to foot. When the priest examines the infected person, the body that the disease covers, and it covers the entire body, he will pronounce that person ceremonially clean. Since the skin has turned completely white, that person is clean. But only if open sores appear in the affected person, then he will be pronounced ceremonially unclean. The priest has made this pronouncement as soon as he sees open sores, since open sores indicate the presence of skin disease. However, if the open sores heal and turn white like the rest of the skin, the person must enter and return to the priest for another examination. If the affected areas have indeed turned white, and the priest then will pronounce that person ceremonially clean by declaring, "You are clean." If anyone has a boil on the skin that has started to heal, but a white swelling or a reddish white spot develops in its place, that person must go to the priest to be examined. If the priest examines it and finds it to be more than skin deep, and if the hair in the affected area has turned white, the priest must pronounce that person ceremonially unclean. The boil has become a serious skin disease. But if the priest finds no white hair on the affected area, and the problem appears to be no more than skin deep, and it has faded, the priest must quarantine the person for 7 days. If during that time the affected area spreads on the skin, the priest must pronounce the person ceremonially unclean, because it is a serious disease. But if the area grows no larger and it does not spread, it's merely a scar from the boil. The priest will pronounce that person ceremonially clean. If anyone has suffered a burn on the skin and the burned area changes color, becoming either reddish white or shiny white, the priest must examine it. If he finds that the hair on the affected area has turned white, the problem appears to be more than skin deep. A skin disease has broken out in the burn. The priest must then pronounce that person ceremonially unclean, for it is clearly a skin disease. But if the priest finds no white hair on the affected area and the problem appears to be no more than skin deep and it has faded, the priest must quarantine the affected person for 7 days, and on the 7th day the priest must examine the person again. If the affected area has spread on the skin, the priest must pronounce that person ceremonially unclean, for it is clearly a skin disease. But if the affected area has not changed or spread on the skin and it has faded, it's simply a swelling from the burn. The priest will then pronounce that person ceremonially clean, for it is only a scar from the burn. If either a man or a woman has a sore on his head or chin, then the priest must examine it. If he finds that it's more than skin deep and it has fine yellow hair on it, the priest must pronounce that person ceremonially unclean. It's a scabby sore of the head or chin. If the priest examines the scabby sore and finds that it's only skin deep, but there's no black hair on it, he must quarantine the person for 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest must examine the sore again. If he finds that the scabby sore has not spread and there is no yellow hair in it and it appears to be only skin deep, that person must shave off all hair except the hair on the affected area. Then the priest must quarantine that person for another 7 days. On the 7th day, he will examine the sore again. If it has not spread and it appears to be no more than skin deep, the priest will then pronounce that person ceremonially clean. The person's clothing must be washed and the person will be ceremonially clean. But if the scabby sore begins to spread after the person is pronounced clean, the priest must do another examination. If he finds that the sore has spread, the priest does not need to look for yellow hair. The infected person is ceremonially unclean. But if the color of the scabby sore does not change and the black hair does not grow in it, it has healed. The priest will then pronounce that person ceremonially clean. If anyone, either man or woman, has a shiny white patch on the skin, the priest must examine the affected area. If he finds that the shiny patches are only pale white, this is a harmless skin rash, and the person is ceremonially clean. If the man loses his hair on his head and becomes bald, he is ceremonially clean. If he loses hair on his forehead, he simply has a bald forehead. He's still clean. However, if a reddish white sore appears on the bald area on top of his forehead, this is a skin disease. The priest must examine him. If he finds swelling around the reddish white sore anywhere on the man's head and it looks like a skin disease, this man indeed is infected with the skin disease and is unclean. The priest must pronounce him ceremonially unclean because of the sore on his head. Those who suffer from serious skin diseases must tear their clothing and leave their hair uncombed. They must cover their mouth and call out, "Unclean, unclean." As long as the serious disease lasts, they will be ceremonially unclean. They must live in isolation in their place outside the camp. Now suppose mildew contaminates some woolen or linen clothing. Woolen or linen fabric, the hide of an animal, anything made of leather. If the contaminated area of a clothing or an animal hide, the fabric or the leather of the article has turned greenish or reddish, it has been contaminated with mildew, it must be shown to the priest. After examining the affected spot, the priest will put the article in quarantine for 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest must inspect it again. If the contaminated area has spread, the clothing or fabric or leather is clearly contaminated by serious mildew and is ceremonially unclean. The priest must burn the item, the clothing, the woolen or linen fabric or piece of leather, for it has been contaminated by serious mildew. It will be completely destroyed by fire. If the priest examines and finds that the contamination has not spread in the clothing or fabric or leather, the priest will order the object to be washed and then quarantine for 7 more days. Then the priest must examine the object again, and if he finds that the contaminated area has not changed color after being washed, even if it did not spread, the object is defiled and it must be completely burnt up, whether the contaminated spot is on the inside or the outside. But if the priest examines it and finds that the contaminated area has faded after being washed, he must cut the spot from the clothing or fabric or leather. If that spot later reappears on the clothing or fabric or leather, the article, the mildew is clearly spreading, and the contaminated object must be burned up. But if the spot disappears from the clothing, the fabric, or the leather article after it has been washed, it must be washed again, then it will be ceremonially clean. These are the instructions for dealing with mildew that contaminates woolen or linen clothing or fabric or anything made of leather. This is how the priest will determine whether these items are ceremonially clean or unclean. Mark 6, 1 through 29. Jesus left that part of the country, and he returned with his disciples to Nazareth, his hometown. The next Sabbath, he began teaching at the synagogue, and many who heard him were amazed. They asked, "Where did he get this wisdom and power to perform such miracles?" Then they scoffed. "He's just a carpenter, the son of Mary, and he's the brother of James and Joseph and Judas and Simon, and his sisters live right here among us." And they were deeply offended and refused to believe him. Then Jesus told them, "A prophet is honored everywhere except for his hometown, and among his relatives and his own family." And because of their unbelief, he couldn't do any miracles among them, except to place his hands on a few sick people and heal them. He was amazed at their unbelief. Then Jesus went from village to village, teaching people, and called his 12 disciples together and began to send them out 2 by 2, giving them authority to cast out evil spirits. He told them to take nothing on their journey except for a walking stick. No food, no traveler's bag, no money. He allowed them to wear sandals, but not to take a change of clothes. "Wherever you go," he said, "stay in the same house until you leave town. But if a place refuses to welcome you or listen to you, shake the dust from your feet as you leave and show that you have abandoned those people to their fate." So the disciples went out, telling everyone they met to repent from their sins and turn to God. They cast out many demons and healed many sick people, anointing them with olive oil. Herod Antipas, the king, soon heard about Jesus, because everyone was talking about him. Some were saying, "This must be John the Baptist, raised from the dead. That's the only way he can do such miracles." Others said he's the prophet Elijah, and others even said he's a prophet like the other great prophets of the past. When Herod heard about Jesus, he said, "John, the man I beheaded, has come back from the dead." For Herod had sent soldiers to arrest and imprison John as a favor to Herodias. She had been his brother Philip's wife, but Herod had married her. John had been telling Herod it was against God's law for you to marry your brother's wife. So Herodias bore a grudge against John and wanted to kill him. But without Herod's approval, she was powerless. For Herod respected John. Knowing that he was a good and holy man, he protected him. Herod was greatly disturbed whenever he talked with John, but even so, he liked to listen to him. Herodias' chance finally came when Herod's birthday came around. He gave a party for his high government officials, army officers, the leading citizens of Galilee. Then his daughter, who was also named Herodias, came in to perform the dance that greatly pleased Herod and his guests. "Ask me anything you would like," the king said to the girl, "and I will give it to you." He even vowed, "I will give you whatever you ask, up to half of my kingdom." So she went out and asked her mother, "What should I ask for?" Her mother said, "Ask for the head of John the Baptist." So the girl hurried back to the king and said, "I want the head of John the Baptist right now on a tray." Then the king deeply regretted what he had said. Because of the vow he had made in front of his guest, he couldn't refuse her. So immediately he sent an executioner to the prison to cut off John's head and to bring it to him. The soldier beheaded John in the prison and brought his head on a tray and gave it to the girl, who took it to her mother. When John's disciples had heard what happened, they came to get the body and they buried him in a tomb. Psalm 39, 1 through 13. I said to myself, I'll watch what I do and not sin in what I say. I'll hold my tongue when the ungodly are around me. But as I stood there in silence, not even speaking of good things, the turmoil within me grew worse. The more I thought about it, the hotter I got. Igniting a fire of words, Lord, remind me how brief my time on earth will be. Remind me that my days are numbered, how fleeting life is. You have made my life no longer than the width of my hand. An entire lifetime is just a moment to you. At best, each of us is a breath. We are merely moving shadows, and all of our busy rushing ends to nothing. We heap up wealth, not knowing how to spend it. And Lord, where do I put my hope? My only hope is in you. Rescue me from my rebellion. Don't let fools mock me. I'm silent before you. I won't say a word. My punishment is from you, but please stop striking me. I'm exhausted from the blows from your hand. When you discipline us for our sins, you consume like a moth what is precious to us. Each of us is but a breath. Hear my prayer, O Lord. Listen to the cries for help. Don't ignore my tears, for I am your guest, a traveler passing through, as my ancestors were before me. Leave me alone so I can smile again, before I'm gone and exist no more. Proverbs 10:10. People who wink at wrong cause trouble, but a bold reproof promotes peace.